Hello, everyone. How are we doing? There we go. That's more response than I get from not these students, but my undergraduate students for sure. Really happy to be here, and today we're going to talk about AI and game design education. So I know that we went over this a little bit, but like my background and what it is that we're talking about today involves taking a step back here. So I am an assistant professor of digital media with a specialization in game studies and game design. I think design and studies might be flipped in my official title. I'll have to look that up. What this means at Georgia Tech is that I am officially in the Department of Literature, Media, and Communication, but I teach in our subunit, which is digital media, which is our graduate program. So I teach undergraduates in the LMC, Literature, Media, Communication. I teach MS students in digital media, PhD students in digital media, and then MS students in our HCI program. So it means that I get a lot of different types of students, but it also has some like odd connotations to what we're talking about here today, which is AI use in game design. So I teach all of these assorted classes, as well as overseeing the master's projects and PhD projects in my lab that is called the Gamepad Lab, the Game Philosophy and Design Lab. So this leads to this very strange confluence of different students, different programs, all these things that are going on. And when I first started teaching there, we have an AI policy. Now, because I'm in a literature, media, and communication, the literature is predominant here. We have a strictly no AI use in our department. Because while I teach games, a lot of my colleagues teach things like literature. So, you know, if you're teaching a class on Shakespeare, you probably don't want people using LMMs to be writing their papers and doing these sorts of things. So even within the syllabi that I write for all of my classes, I have a disclaimer that says, you are not allowed to use AI. And then I need to go through that every semester to be like, I mean, you can't use it in your writing, but when we're designing games, I want you to use all tools. Because AI is just a tool. AI tools are just tools like any other game design software or anything like that. So this is where this question comes of like, is AI cheating or plagiarism? In the context of somebody writing a final paper about 20th century American literature, yeah, I guess it is plagiarism. You know, you don't want to be using that. In the context of, hey, make a post-colonial game about monsters for me, no, it is not plagiarism. And I always encourage my students to be trying to use all of these new tools. This partially aligns with this idea of like, how is it that industry is using AI? Because as much as we want to make sure that our teaching is separated to a certain extent from like what is happening in industry, we also need to realize that we're training people who want to go and work in industry. So me being like, no, you can't use any AI tools, that is like incorrect or immoral is not necessarily a helpful way for me to teach my classes. So I've been as open as possible in embracing AI tools, which is kind of scary because for those of you who teach, I don't use AI tools. So telling people that they can use a thing that I know nothing about at first was, didn't feel so great. Wasn't sure what was going to come of it. But we've had a lot of like really interesting results over, I'm just finishing my second year at Georgia Tech, so I've been teaching 4 semesters now. So how have my students used AI? They have made AI art, they've made AI music, they have done a lot of AI vibe coding, and this is actually from this semester. I don't have these sorts of moves, but my students created a game prototype, and when you finish the prototype, this is the thing that played. And it actually fooled me because for a moment I was like, oh my, I'm so embarrassed that they have a picture of me like they have me dancing. And it took me like the 2 to 3 seconds to go like, oh no, it's clearly AI. So they've done like funny things like this. They've done also a lot more meaningful work. So there are other uses, ... and I'm gonna pass this over to Audrey.
Hi everyone, my name is Audrey Chung, and I'm a digital media student at Georgia Tech, and one of Professor Ryan's students in his game design class this semester. Yes, and so a little bit about me. I do UI UX design, digital art, and game development, and so I'll be talking about my team's experiences using AI in Professor Ryan's class and how it affected our workflow. And so for starters, I have done vibe coding for a different class before. And in my experience, I found that I wasn't really patient enough to be telling ChatGPT what to do. And this is partially because ChatGPT has given me functions that just don't exist. And this issue is a lot more prevalent the less data or documentation there is. And so because I'm starting to use Godot for this class, I didn't think it was a good idea to try vibe coding again. But I have used AI in other ways. So considering the limitations of generative AI, what have we used ChatGPT for? So, while we do have a dedicated artist on the team, art takes time to create. And so having worked mainly in front-end and game dev, I also like to output my code to look somewhat polished. And so it's been really helpful in giving me that little boost of motivation to keep coding. And so when there's no official art yet to populate the game, I have a folder of placeholder art, which is usually composed of images from Google or from ChatGPT. And I think it was around this time that I found out that if you try being polite to ChatGPT, it would just waste more energy. And so I try to use as little words as possible. So for this one art over here, I decided, pixelated art of cloudy lake. Whatever comes out, comes out. I'm not gonna ask twice. This kind of defeats the purpose of prompt engineering, but I think that's okay because it's not meant to be production-ready art. So in our final implementation, once my friend is done with all of her art assets, so I'm just gonna put it up here. This is all drawn by Savannah Mosley, my friend. She's a great artist. And we just dropped all of those in the game. And this is what comes out in our final production. So we've also used AI-generated music for our game since we don't have a music composer on the team, which I think my teammate produced on Suno. And so it fit the theme of our game. It took her a few iterations to find one that she really liked. And then we just pitched it down a little, and boom, background music. So while we have used AI-generated materials for our game, we also discussed our concerns over the ethics of artist compensation because of the way that the data has been harvested from publicly available works online. And my friend and I, being part of a community of artists online, we do share these concerns as well. And so in the end, we sort of landed on this sentiment that we will use what we really need since at the end of the day, we're just college students. And so that has been my experience with using generative AI in game design so far. And I'm interested in learning other avenues of generative AI, maybe as a tool for coming up with alternate game mechanics and more dynamic storylines. And with the current legal gray area surrounding AI, I'm really hoping for a royalty system being set up for artists. Like, I really like the idea of that. I feel like they tried to do it with NFT, but didn't really go anywhere. And so now I'm gonna pass the mic on to Melody, who has way more experience than I do.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Melody Ren, and I'm also Ryan's master student, and I just graduated this year. I want to introduce one of an experimental AI workshops that we conducted in Ryan's game design course last year. So in this workshop, we want to explore, can we actually make a small game if we have no fundamental knowledge and only depend on different AI tools? And we also want to talk about the ethical implications and creative consequence of AI adoption. In the workshop, we let our students to make a very simple little game about capybara and anything they want, because at that time capybara was trending on the internet and just for fun, I think. And our workshop had 4 main activities: AI for narrative generation, game art, AI for music, and AI for coding. And each activity allows students to experiment with one AI tool. First, in the AI for narrative generation part, we used ChatGPT. I believe it was the 3.5 ChatGPT model at that time. The students experiment with different prompting strategies and discovering that specific prompts about desired elements yield much better results. And after generating initial narratives, we introduced students to classic story structure and considered whether the AI-generated story followed effective story structure and would translate well to the gameplay. In the AI for game art part, we tried an AI tool called Scenario AI. It's an AI tool specifically designed for game art. And we use this AI to generate some character design, environment, and prepare assets for implementation. And I think the outcome is not very good because the quality of the generation art is very unstable in the workshop, and sometimes the capybara has 5 legs, and sometimes it's just a giant rat. And next, we want to make some background music or some music effect for this capybara adventure. So we used Suno AI to explore the music generation, and we taught the students how to craft effective prompts by combining style, emotions, instrumentation, rhythm, and vocals for their game, all using the prompts in Suno AI. And at last, we built this game using Godot with the assistance of ChatGPT again. Rather than like traditional tutorial like on the YouTube or in universities about how to use game engines like Godot and Unity, students prompt AI with some specific implementation questions like, please help me write some script about how to control the character's movement. So this kind of reverse the conventional learning approach as students learned on demand based on their immediate need. So, but also, although the ChatGPT generates the script really quickly, but we found that the outcome was not good because most students just get like a capybara glitching on the screen, or they even can't open the game because there are too many bugs. And we found that GPT also made up a lot of fake functions that even do not exist in the Godot system. And there's only very few students that get the functions they want. I remember there's a classmate that make a game called Capybara Clicker based on the cookie clicker. And you just keep clicking a capybara hundreds and thousands of times, then equipped him with different weapons and costumes. Yeah, I think after the workshops, the most valuable outcome emerged during our discussion about AI's role in game development. So students had a really heated debate about whether AI enhance creativity or threaten jobs, how much companies should rely on the technology, and where ethical boundaries should be set. Through these discussions, we had some findings. First, prompt engineering significantly impact output quality. To generate script and art has a high quality, you cannot just type in like, please help me generate a capybara picture. You need to add a lot of prompt. And also, while AI could generate working code, understanding fundamental functions remain important for troubleshooting. And last but most important, as students major in digital media, human-computer interaction, and computer science, all of us are very worried about our future in game and other tech industries. I think, like Professor Kionis mentioned in his presentation, we may not be replaced by AI, but we can be replaced by people who is good at using AI. So in this situation, I think in the future, maybe students should somehow follow the trend, and instead of just put all of them effort into learning Unity and Blender like the old time. Thank you.
Great. Not yet. Okay. So just as some like quick conclusions from like 2 years of doing this, there's been some interesting things that I've found with it in that I teach tools-based game design. Basically, it's just the idea that you don't teach students how to use Unity because then they learn how to use Unity rather than learning how to make games. So I have them consider like a wide range of their tools, everything from like Excel sheets to like pencil and paper as all being game design tools. So I like to think of AI tools in that way, but there has been some pushback. Some of the students don't like AI for all of the reasons that we're talking about today. Something really interesting in a classroom connotation with it is that some of them don't like it because they don't find the workloads to be equitable. So we do team-based game design, and I've had some students complain being like, I wrote all of my code fresh, and so just AI generated all our art. So, it took me tens of dozens of hours to get all of my stuff done, and they did their stuff in like 30 minutes. So why do we get the same grade? So beyond the like common ethical things that we talk about within our, within like all of these issues that we have with AI, there are specific challenges within the classroom of trying to be equitable, trying to make sure that we're preparing the students correctly, and trying to make sure that it's not just like a loophole to stop them from being creative, but is actively encouraging them to be creative. So now, thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to any questions that you would have. Oh, perfect. I always forget to mention this as well. This is my itch page. It's called Tubba Games Manufacturing Concern. It's an inside joke I named after my cat in a Simpsons quote. But any of the games that get made in my graduate classes go up onto this page if you want to go and check that. We're a couple semesters behind because there's a professor who is me and isn't putting them up very quickly. But there's going to be more in the next few weeks.
So I'll ask you a question, and I'll run this while I'm asking the question. Did you take a survey of the students' opinions regarding AI for games before they did the project and after to compare if their opinions and feelings changed over the course of this project? And next question, I'll run to you.
So I have not done a specific like survey beforehand. A lot of my results come from my the course assessments from the students or having conversations with them afterwards. I'm sure that all of you either remember this or in the situation now of starting your first like university teaching job and just being thrown into the deep end. And then, like, I remember being there in the first week and having conversations, like the first week of actually teaching and having conversations with other people in my department being like, can I let them use AI? Like it says in this, like in our handbook that they're not allowed to use AI for anything. So thrown into the deep end there. And then even over the past like 2 years of doing this, like the tools have gotten so much more sophisticated where running them in the like 2 years ago was like, oh, this isn't really helping that much, to now being like, oh, this can do a lot of heavy lifting. So surveys in the future I think would be really useful, but most of the feedback I've been getting is just through the typical class assessments that come in every year.
Hi. I guess my question is going to, because you mentioned like Blender being assisted by AI, and someone mentioned that there's like plugins that are the actual methods of being able to utilize that. I guess in your classes, are you seeing, I guess, what are the biggest shifts in how much AI is helping with particular things when they're making games, if that makes sense?
The biggest one every single semester, and this has more to do with the types of students that I get than anything else, is music. Because I find that because of the specializations that we have people who can code. We have artists. We have people who have experience like writing narrative, and not even just writing narrative, usually writing game narrative. But where we have a big shortfall is always in people that we don't really have people who know sound design or are trained in sound design. We don't have musicians necessarily. And music is one of these things that really has to be like so ingrained in the development process that I find so many of the projects are just like, and we're going to either get like freely available like open source songs, or we're going to use AI generation. So that's been the biggest thing, is it really helps with the sound design for sure. I think what is going to start happening is that there are going to be more of my students who already know how to code, who are vibe coding as a way of like filling in their code. But that's only something I've started to see this semester. I have one of my students, his name is Spencer, and he's really into it. And I think that he did some of his coding. They were the ones who made the me dancing AI at the end too. So there's it's in the past been music. I think moving forward it's going to be more coding.
Yeah, actually. Okay.
It sounded like you did.
So when it comes to, I guess, like creating 3D, the characters, I guess, like, I don't know, do your students create full games, or is it like segments of games that you focus on? And then when it comes to making characters or environments that are 3D, how much is AI helping you kind of streamline that, or helping them streamline that, if that makes sense?
So with my students over 16-week semesters, I have them pitch to me what a full project would be. And then they make, we use terminologies like vertical slice, working demo, alpha, whatever it is that is just to show them like small. So I let them use like placeholders where they want to and to really focus on certain aspects of their development. A lot of my students have actually worked in 2D rather than 3D. I don't know if it's because they think it's going to be simpler when they start, or if the artists that have typically been in the class are just more just they want to work in 2D rather than 3D. When we have had 3D, that's usually where people use placeholders. That's usually where they're like, okay, like we rip some assets here and this is a placeholder, but this is what we would like it to look like. Here's some like concept art and that sort of thing. So because we have such short like development periods, I haven't seen anybody use AI yet for like filling in 3D modeling. But it is a thing that could come up. I expect that it might come up more likely with one of my master's or PhD students because they're working on longer term projects rather than just like one semester. So, you know, they've got 2, 3, 4, or multiple years. So I think it could come up then. And I see that there's...
How did you distinguish between your student that used AI for the project versus the one that wrote all the code on their own? Did you have a different rubric, or does it matter?
For me, it doesn't matter because I consider them to be like tools that are, they are all game design tools. So one of the things that I do with my students that I've been switching up a little bit recently to more formalize it. I don't know if any of you have read Method for Design Materialization by Khaled Barr and Lassard. But essentially it is a way of using GitHub and other tools to more precisely track your development as you go through your development, as a way of making it more accessible for third parties to understand how game design works, but also for you to better track and understand your decision making in your early stages. I have my students do this throughout the semester, and I let them use whatever tools they want to. So some of them choose AI tools. Some of them choose things that they're like, I already know Unity, so we're going to build this thing in Unity. When it comes to my students who are doing art, they have 10,000 different tools that they're always like telling me that they're using there. So I consider the tools to be as equal as possible, but I'm realizing that the AI tools are starting to get like a little bit too quick with it. So far it was, even 2 years ago, it was like, yeah, you can get it to spit out code, but then you have to go back and like fix most of this stuff anyway. So it felt like it was more egalitarian. Moving forward, I'm going to have to like reassess this and see how it's being used and decide if I'm going to keep allowing that, or if I'm, as you were mentioning, going to have to switch up rubrics. If I'm going to have to disallow AI for specific functions or allow it, or you know how it is when you're teaching, like you want all of your grades to be as equitable as possible. You want equality of effort and of credit for them. So it's ever changing because of how quickly these technologies are going. But short answer, so far hasn't been too big of a deal, but is definitely going to hit that tipping point where I'm going to have to be a lot more strict with it. Oh, I got a couple here.
So you said that because AI is getting so good, you might say, hey, you cannot use AI for this or that. Have you considered instead raising the bar so people have to use AI? So as AI gets better, wouldn't the market reaction would be that games would get better or more sophisticated and better art? So wouldn't that be more realistic? I'm not criticizing, just asking, what do you think of this perspective?
This is an excellent question. Because all of, like, just like totally honest with you. All of my students are better game makers than me coming in. Like they all have so much more technical ability than me. And sometimes I feel more like a just trying to herd the kittens, so to speak, to it's like, you know, like let's go through here. With that said, though, one of my big things is to keep my classes as accessible as possible. So I am in a literature department. I have so many students who are really interested in making games who maybe they only have the experience in like narrative writing. So they don't have the same technical skills. Or maybe they only have experience in one very specific skill at our school that typically is UI UX, where they're like, I can do all these things. I've never done it for games before, though. So while I do like look at the very top end of my students in terms of experience and what they can build and think, yeah, let's like crank this up, I always want to make sure that I'm like allowing as many people as possible. Because the most common question I get before any of my courses start from students who want to take it are, do I need to code, do I need experience in games, or something that starts along the lines of, I really like games, but... And I don't want to raise things too high because if you raise that floor too high, then you're like cutting people out. And I would love for I want as many of the undergraduates who come into that program and are like, I want to study film. I want to convert them all to be games people. That's what I want by the end of it. I want to just get all of them in there so that we get more voices and all these things. So. It's always the temptation to be like, yeah, let's like really push this. Let's get these people who've been making games since they were like 8 years old to like go right max out to the top. But I want to leave it open too.
So one common problem with students' game projects is they horribly overestimate their ability and what they can accomplish in the time allotted. Do you find that AI pushes them to do even more of that, figuring they can do even more, or does it help them rein them in by giving them something realistic when they first start concepting?
There is nothing that I can do to make them be realistic. The only word that I say to them in our, I have a midterm proposal that goes out of like lock-in is what you're doing. And the comment that I've given on every single one of these projects in all of my courses over 2 years is feasibility. Let's cut this down. So I don't know if AI is making them think that they can do more because they always think they can do everything, and it's always just me like cutting it down, cutting it down, cutting it down.
Plate and add more.
And I think Doug also had a question.
No, we're not letting him ask it.
Okay, so my quick question was, and this is also for you as students, right? Like, have you noticed, like, I feel like with my students, I noticed some kind of resistance to using AI, except with freshmen. So aside from that, like people who are really wanting to get in the game industry and things like that, whenever we bring up AI, I always see a little, move towards the back, right? They're not super comfortable with it. And so I'm wondering if you see the same thing in your classes or with your, with your peers.
This is their first time doing a conference, so I have an answer, but I'm going to make you answer. Okay. Just, you only need to do one, and then no more attention. You don't need to do any. So answer the question.
Do you want to go first? Okay. Yeah, actually, many of my classmates are anti-AI because some of them want to be an artist, and so the AI will take their jobs. And so I mentioned in my presentation that our job may not be taken by AI, but just might be somebody good at using AI. So from my perspective, I think using AI will be a good tool and help us to get a job. Yeah. What about you?
For me in my grade, I feel like it's sort of a mixed bag. I have some friends who are very enthusiastic about using AI. Not for art, but like for therapy and writing, stuff like that. And on the other hand, I have seen those who shy away from it, mostly because of us being artists. And so we already know how much work it takes to make art, so we feel bad taking it away from other artists. But the sentiment so far has been pretty mixed, but there is an openness to using AI depending on the context.
Yeah, and I just try and be as like blue sky as possible with them and just encourage them to try as many different things as possible. So, you know, if there's some of them who are really locked into wanting to use AI or not wanting to use AI, I almost think of it as the same as like, do you want to make a 2D game or a 3D game? Like, it's what you want to do and how you want to shape your project. And when I design my courses, they have to make a game at the end, and I give them the like barest bones. Like even with my graduate students, it's like we're talking about post-colonialism and monsters. I did a capstone with my undergraduates this semester, and literally I was just like, the game needs to be about something. Pick a cultural critique. It just needs to be about something. Make anything. So I treat the AI tools like that as well. They want to use them, they can use them. They don't want to use them, that's fine too.
That AI threatens your job? Do you think that AI would do a good job of critiquing the students' work or telling them how to make it more feasible? Do you use it also to accelerate your job, to write student recommendations, things like that?
So the biggest threat to my job is people like this. This is the next wave coming. This is the threat. And I'm watching the two of you. Remember all the good things that I did when you have power. More seriously, I don't know that AI threatens my role in terms of like a cultural critique. I don't know that AI has enough cultural context right now. It's good at spitting things out that it's already been told, but if it's it doesn't generate new, it doesn't think. It doesn't generate new information. It doesn't generate new, it's not the Terminator, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not the Terminator where it's going to think and take us over. It is a thing that we need to feed information into it. So unless we feed all of the information that we have into it, which I don't think will ever happen, there are things that AI can do, but I think that our contexts are constantly changing. I have a really good example, but I don't want to use that example because people always use the example. I do a lot of work with like historical context. Things that we think would be locked in the way that we think about certain people and groups are constantly changing. Over the course of decades, there is a fluidity to it, and generally when we think about the past, we're not trying to remember the past, we're trying to contextualize it into the present. So we take things that were once considered like 100% to be evil, and then, well, maybe there's a little bit of gray area so that we can do these sorts of things. Like, we always use those sorts of context. So you couldn't ask an AI, like, was it right to use the atomic bombs? And get the totality of the answer in terms of like historical context, the way that we think about it now, why we think about it that way now, what that has says about power, these sorts of things. So I don't think in terms of cultural critique that an AI would ever be able to fully replace that because we would need to be constantly regenerating the information for it. In terms of like writing student evaluations and stuff like that, I don't know that AI has the sentimentality for it. Because when I write those sorts of, my favorite thing to do is to write reference letters, because it is a way of like, it is an activity that I didn't realize that I needed, to like put the way that you feel about a person into the context of how great they are, and then to like put that out there. I don't think AI does that. AI doesn't have the emotion to it as well. So I know that we can talk about emotion AI and all these sorts of things too, but I think there's context and nuance and a lot of things that humans do that we don't necessarily have in AI. Could it be possible? Like, anything is possible, but I don't feel particularly threatened by it. I think that I hope that all of you are enjoying like listening to me talk today a lot better than if I just fed all of the exact same words and information into a computer and had it like spit it out to you, even in an AI voice that is just my voice. I like to think the gesticulating and the changes in tone help, but that's maybe the best way that I can put it. I don't feel particularly threatened by AI in that scenario.
I'm a big fan of Ian Bogost, who used to teach at Georgia Tech, and I haven't really read anything he's written about AI or anything like that. I was curious, like, were you there when he was there? Do you have any influence on?
I wasn't there when he was there because when he left, I'm the one they hired.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
So,
But,
I met him.
Yeah.
Like before a talk once, I shook his hand. It was really nice.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't there when. Ian
Have you
was there.
read any of his books or?
Oh yeah, Ian. Persuasive Games is like one of the central to
Play
my
Anything is one of my
dissertation work,
favorite
and
books of all time and stuff. So has he sort of had any influence on your sort of pedagogy or just kind of anything like that?
I ask my students who are interested in narrative to read BOGO stuff and because I think of games as argumentation. Mm-hmm. So that is like a big part of like my background in game studies and how I think about games and how I make games and how I teach games. So that part of it is definitely in there. When it comes to, I don't know if I'd say he's like a direct influence on my pedagogy. Mm-hmm. I think my pedagogy has been built of like, welcome to Georgia Tech. You can do whatever you want in this course. Oh, also it starts 2 days from now. And me just went, like, okay. I kind of wanted this information a little bit sooner. Mm-hmm. So the pedagogy I've been like building. But like I talked about MDM before. So MDM is one thing that I use from the design side. And then the tools-based game design is Stephen Werning. He wrote a book called Making Games: The Politics and Poetics of Game Tools. It's by MIT Press. And I wanted to say it was new, but I was thinking about it earlier. It's like 2019, which was like 1,000 years ago after this point, I think. Yeah. But those two have been like really central to my like pedagogy and how I think about design. But yeah, Bogos is definitely one of the names that's in there for how I think about some game studies and how I incorporate that as well.
Do you know how he feels about AI? I haven't read anything he's written or anything like that.
I don't know, and I don't know him very well, but my assumption would be that he has things to say about it and doesn't like it. Or the complete opposite, that he absolutely loves it, just to throw you off the scent a little bit. But my thought would be he probably doesn't like it, but would be able to articulate it a lot better than me just guessing on like if he does or doesn't.
Yeah, I want AI that can make a game like his TSA game where you get arrested for trying to take hummus through TSA, or his got oil or weather games.
Thank you for the talk. I found it very insightful. But one thing that is kind of a question for me is so much of making games is about communication within the team. Is a collaborative effort. Do you foresee any issues with using AI by, kind of reducing that collaboration in the team? Do you see that as an issue? Do you foresee that this might be an issue in the future? And do you have any solutions?
So that would be a matter of gradient to me. I think that if you introduce too much of it, that it would definitely break down your communications, and it isn't solving the problems that people would think that it is. If the idea of AI is to be more efficient, but you use too much of it, then it is exactly as you're saying. You're going to have to introduce more people into the equation to sort out the things that the AI are doing and making it so that they can actually work with one another. So I think that if we think of AI as a tool and one of the tools that we're using in our toolkit to make games, that it's fine. If we are thinking of AI as a replacement for a human being who's just going to spit out all of this stuff, that you are losing once again all of the nuance in these sorts of things, and that you're going to need to like sort out the work and to actually like have someone who's doing that. So is this a matter of introducing more tools that will result in job loss because you need a little fewer people, or is it going to be like many other historical technologies where it's just like it just creates new jobs because there's people who need to do it? Like we never had a photocopy repair person before we had the photocopier, but that is a whole thing. So it could be that in a corporate context that you have people whose job is to like sort out the things that AI is doing, so it's just like another management class in there. Or it could be that you have a bunch of other jobs of people who are like fitting into teams in that way. And on like a grassroots level, it could be a thing where you just don't use AI as much because it takes too much of this management.
And just a follow-up to that is, when you mention using AI as a tool, I think there are levels to that that it is a little vague to me. So like, as a game designer, for example, what is the extent of which you would accept use of AI? You know, like, would it be, in your perspective, would it be okay if like somebody just gave a bunch of vague instructions to an AI agent and like, okay, why don't you develop this into a full idea? You know, like much of development of games is art, and like once you try to automate art, it kind of becomes weird and icky to me. So what do you think about that?
So in terms of like how much of it I would accept, theoretically limitless. Like theoretically, you could potentially put together an amazing game using only AI tools, and I think that would be great. You know, in the same way that you use Unity as a tool, you use Excel to build your battle system, you use pencil and paper to draw your, like it could be just another tool. I think right now we're at the point where it's, as you say, that it doesn't have the nuance that you can just throw everything into like an AI generator or different AI tools, I should say, and generate a game from it.
So like what that entail to me, like I'm a technical person, so like to me what this does, what like an LLM agent does, is just regurgitate what it has seen before. So there is a danger here of like reducing all of the designs into like a average annotator's knowledge of game design, and not have like novel things that come out of actually innovating in game design. Like I fear this future of game designers that have used AI all their life and cannot even conceive of a new game. Like we would lose the next Lucas Pope to make, you know, Papers, Please out of, you know, and we would like get into this point where everything is just average, because that's what AI does. It's just like averages out a bunch of vectors.
Yeah, so to some extent, like if you go through like Steam, for example, you're already finding a lot of stuff that's just dumped on there. And this is like pre-AI too. There was a lot of just like the so-called asset flips, where someone would just buy an asset pack from Unity, slap a title on it, and then put it on like onto the store. But those games don't tend to do very well. And I think that right now we're at a point with AI that if you just 100% AI generated everything in a game, that like it'll be functional, but it's not necessarily going to be the thing that's winning Game of the Year that everybody's talking about and wants to play and changes their lives and like is a culturally meaningful artifact to them. So maybe one day it can get there, but right now, like I'm not entirely sure. In terms of like pedagogy and teaching though, like watching someone experiment with that stuff to develop it into a tool so that we can be making culturally meaningful stuff out of it is like perfectly fine for me. I understand all the things that we say about like it taking away the rights of artists and like the negative things that AI can do. There's some equitability in it though, as well as not needing to have every one of these tools. I'm very lucky. I get a classroom full of students every semester. I can group them up into teams. They all have different abilities and they can make games together. There are so many cases where that's not possible, where there's like one person who wants to make a game. They can't do all of those things on their own. So learning how to use these tools and incorporate it will introduce more people to basic game design into the field and potentially be a catalyst for like a lifelong thing that they want to do. So it has its positives, it has its negatives, but I think that we need to nuance that, to think about that, and to all in all, like we're in control of this. We get to decide how much of this is popularized and how much of this gets used. So let's use AI responsibly and all of that.